You can also reach me and DM me in my Instagram account at Tvri. You can read somewhere below here. Thank you again everyone for practicing today. I hope you enjoy the practice. I will see you in the next episode. Have a very good day. Namaste.
Foreign Minister Retno Marsudi says United Nations response to situation in Gaza has been very slow. Presidential candidate Prabowo Subianto and running mate Gibran Rakabuming Raka officially submit candidacy to KPU. Two giant panda cubs enjoy a tender moment in Chengdu research base of giant. Hello, I'm Valerina Daniel, and you're watching Focus Today on TVR World live from Indonesia. Let's begin with our first report. Ambassador and Permanent Representative of the Republic of Indonesia to the United Nations in New York, Armanata Nasir, said that Indonesian Foreign Minister Retno Marsudi will attend 3 meetings at the United Nations or UN that will discuss conflict resolutions in Gaza, Palestine.
Speaking to the press virtually, Ambassador Armanata said Minister Retno participate in resumption of discussion at the United Nations Security Council. He said the discussion at the United Nations Security Council is another effort by the UN Security Council to address the Gaza issue. Member states of the UN Security Council have previously pushed and made several efforts to seek conflict resolution in Gaza through various draft resolutions. However, the draft was not successfully adopted due to sharp differences in positions among member states related to the conflict between Israel and Palestine. In the meeting that was open to all non-UN Security Council member states, Armanata said that Minister Retno will have the opportunity to express her views related to Gaza. In addition to the meeting held on October 24th, Minister Retno will also participate in the UN Security Council meeting on October 25th that will discuss issues of peace and security. Meanwhile, on October 26th, Minister Retno will also participate in an emergency special session of the United Nations General Assembly who will address the issue on Gaza, Palestine.
Foreign Minister Retno Marsudi says the United Nations response to the situation in Gaza has been very slow. She points at the fact that Gaza is running out of electricity and clean water amidst Israel's blockade.
Foreign Minister Retno Marsudi said in a videotaped speech for the commemoration of the United Nations Day at the National Library in Jakarta on Tuesday that the situation in Gaza and the slow response of the UN reminded us of the importance of the complete UN reform so that it will remain relevant and provide real benefit for the problem. Retno is currently in New York, the United States, after landing on Monday to attend several Security Council meetings today regarding the situation in the Middle East. Previously, Retno called for reform of the UN's multilateral system on September 21st, alongside the ministerial level meeting of the 78th UN General Assembly in preparation for the 2024 Summit of the Future. On the same occasion, Retno said that the UN Security Council must be transparent, democratic, and effective. The 15-member council last week foiled a resolution that called for a humanitarian pause to allow the entry of aid to Gaza Strip. 12-member countries voted agree, but the US used its veto rights against the resolution. Retno Marsudi will call for a ceasefire, opening up a humanitarian access and an end to the Israel occupation in Palestine before the UN Security Council on Tuesday or Wednesday, Jakarta time. Her other agenda was to attend the UNSC high-level open debate on Palestine, UNSC open debate on women, peace and security, as well as special emergency session on the UN General Assembly concerning Israel's illegal actions in occupied East Jerusalem and other Palestine-occupied territories.
Permanent representative of Indonesia to the United Nations UN, Ambassador Armanata Nasir, has held a number of diplomatic efforts to end the Israeli attacks on Palestinian people.
Speaking during an online media briefing conducted by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in Jakarta on Tuesday, Ambassador had conducted a number of efforts to halt the Israeli attacks on Gaza Strip, such as by holding informal consultations with countries in the UN Security Council. Armanata said he had also talked to permanent representatives from China, Japan, Malta, England, and others to end the attacks on Gaza Strip. The informal consultations carried out by Indonesia was aimed to encourage the UN Security Council to prevent further attacks on the Gaza Strip. In addition, Indonesia has also conducted discussions to various committees at the UN General Assembly to raise and to voice Indonesia's concern in the situation in Gaza and to encourage the UN's contribution in carrying out aid in Gaza.
Indonesia's permanent representative to the UN, Ambassador Armanata Nasir, said Indonesia called on the UN General Assembly, UNGA, to hold an emergency special session on the conflicts in Gaza, Palestine.
Foreign Minister Retno Marsudi said in a videotaped speech for the commemoration of the United Nations Day at the National Library in Jakarta on Tuesday that the situation in Gaza and the slow response of the UN reminded us of the importance of the complete UN reform so that it will remain relevant and provide real benefit for the problem. Retno is currently in New York, the United States, after landing on Monday to attend several Security Council meetings today regarding the situation in the Middle East. Previously, Retno called UN system on September 21st, alongside the ministerial level meeting of the 78th UN General Assembly in preparation for the 2024 Summit of the Future. On the same occasion, Retno said that the UN Security Council must be transparent, democratic, and effective. The 15-member council last week foiled a resolution that called for a humanitarian pause to allow the entry of aid to Gaza Strip. 12-member countries voted agree, but the US used its veto rights against the resolution. Retno Marsudi will call for a ceasefire, opening up a humanitarian access and an end to the Israel occupation in Palestine before the UN Security Council on Tuesday or Wednesday, Jakarta time. Her other agenda was to attend the UNSC high-level open debate on Palestine, UNSC open debate on women, peace and security, as well as special emergency session on the UN General Assembly concerning Israel's illegal actions in occupied East Jerusalem and other Palestine-occupied territories. territories in occupied East Jerusalem and other Palestine-occupied territories.
Drone footage over Khan Yunis showed people searching for survivors among the rubble and the dust of a building flattened by Israeli strikes, with the strike also hitting a gas station. Here are the compilation of the stories. Here are the compilation of the stories.
هذه بنتي يا راجل ايش بعملها قبل ما ادفنها؟ كانوا بدهم يغطوا وجهها، قلت لهم الشهيدة عم بتغطاش وجهي. صحيح هذا الله. الشهيد بتغطاش وجهي يا عمي. عادي. الشهيد بتغطاش وجهي يا عمي.
Russia's UN ambassador Vasily Nebenzia opposed proposed U.S. action on the Israel-Hamas conflict and introduced an alternative draft. Meanwhile, Iran's UN ambassador Amir Said Iravani of wrongly blaming Iran for the conflict.
Russia has put forward an alternative draft resolution containing elements from previous drafts by US and Brazil. During a UN Security Council debate, foreign ministers called for an immediate ceasefire in Gaza due to concerns about the conflict potentially spreading across the Middle East. Gaza's health ministry reported over 700 Palestinian casualties in a single night, marking the highest 24-hour death toll since Israel launched its campaign against Hamas following a deadly October 7 attack. Meantime, Said Iravani criticized the U.S. for siding with Israel to the detriment of the Palestinians, exacerbating the conflict. Jordan's Foreign Minister Ayman Safadi, along with other Arab representatives, expressed concern at the UN about the real danger of the conflict spreading. They call for an immediate and lasting ceasefire in Gaza and highlighted double standard as a major obstacle to peace in the Middle East. And in a single night of Israeli airstrikes, over 700 Palestinians were killed, marking the highest 24-hour death toll since Israel initiated its campaign to combat Hamas. Israel has imposed a total siege on Gaza, and international efforts have centered on providing aid to the 2.3 million people in Gaza through the main crossing at Rafah, which is not connected to Israel.
UN agencies called on our knees for aid to be allowed unimpeded into Gaza, saying more than 20 times current deliveries were needed to support its Palestinian population after 2 weeks of Israeli airstrikes.
Aid deliveries into Gaza through the Rafah crossing from Egypt began after intense diplomatic efforts, but human rights spokesman Jeremy Lawrence, along with other UN agencies, say it is insufficient to meet the needs of the 2.3 million population.
The aid, which resumed from Egypt over the weekend, is a mere drop in the ocean of what is needed, when hospitals deprived of resources are overflooded by over 15,000 wounded. The humanitarian situation in Gaza is now verging on catastrophe due to lack of water, power, sanitation, essential medicine, food and other basic necessities. Action by Israel to cut off civilians from access to essential goods and services as a form of collective punishment violates international law, the High Commissioner says.
WHO said medicines and health supplies had been delivered, WHO said medicines and health supplies, but that it's still needed to reach the north of the Palestinian enclave, one of the most densely populated places in the world.
So huge security risks to our personnel trying to deliver those supplies and our partners, because we are handing most of these supplies over to the Palestinian Red Crescent and to health officials on the ground. But we still have not been able to reach the hospitals in the north with the medical supplies or the desperately needed fuel.
Dr. Rick Brennan, WHO Regional Emergencies Director for Eastern Mediterranean region, said 1/3 of hospitals in the Gaza Strip are now non-functional at a time when the medical burden is enormous, and that some 2/3 of clinics are not functioning.
The United Nations World Food Programme, WFP, on Tuesday warned of a deteriorating crisis in Gaza with conditions among the worst the organization had ever seen.
The deputy head of emergency at WFP, Brian Lander, said that people in the enclave were desperate in need of water, food, and all the primary needs for survival. Some people were living on just 1 liter of water a day. Others were reduced to boiling seawater, while organizations like the WFP were unable to reach 1.1 million in desperate need of food.
Without the ability for humanitarian organizations to reach people in need, the situation, as I said, is only going to deteriorate for them. We know that people are in desperate need of water, desperate need of food, desperate need of all those things that are primary for your survival. And yet the crisis continues without our ability to reach them. So the situation is as bad as we've seen anywhere in the world, and we know in the next days it's going to be very tragic.
Israel said that it had killed dozens of Hamas overnight in strikes on Gaza, but that it swore to destroy them, which involves bombarding and blockading the Palestinian enclave, would take time. The United Nations urged Israel to allow more aid into Gaza, saying the aid let in so far met a tiny fraction of the needs, and fuel still blocked was crucial.
Video shared by Palestine Red Crescent Society (PRCS) showed their damaged headquarters in southern Gaza, filled with people who had fled Israeli attacks in the area.
PRCS said via Facebook that a nearby airstrikes injured people and caused extensive damage to the area near the headquarters and the Al Amal hospital in Khan Younis, and that 4,000 people displaced were seeking refuge. Reuters was able to verify the location via the buildings and windows seen in the videos, which match file imagery of the area. Reuters was not able to confirm when the footage was filmed. International pressure for unimpeded aid to Gaza rose as the health ministry in Hamas-ruled coastal territory said Israeli airstrikes had killed more than 700 Palestinians overnight, the highest 24-hour death toll in Israel's 2-week-old siege.
Welcome back to the program. Large clouds of smoke shrouded the area near the Al-Amal Hospital in Khan Yunis in southern Gaza. A video published by Palestine Red Crescent Society shows. Meanwhile, Gaza's Indonesian hospital in Beit Lahia is facing a shortage of fuel necessary for operation, with its director warning their reserves are about to run out.
X, formerly Twitter, a nearby house had been hit by a missile. Israel said on Tuesday it had killed dozens of Hamas fighters overnight in strikes on Gaza, but that it swore to destroy them, which involved bombarding and blockading the Palestinian enclave will take time. The Palestinian Health Ministry said more than 5,000 people have been killed in Gaza by 2 weeks of Israeli airstrikes unleashed in response to a devastating Hamas attack on southern Israel on October 7. The Islamist militant group killed more than 1,400 people, mostly civilians, in a single day. And Atif Al-Kahul has appealed to the world and humanitarian organizations to provide fuel to the northern Gaza Strip. Al-Kahul said they have resorted to an emergency plan of redistributing electrical loads, focusing on the ICU, operating rooms, and patient wards. Israel's total siege of Gaza launched after the October 7 cross-border attack on southern Israel by militants of the Islamic movement Hamas has left the enclave 2.3 million people running out of food, water, medicines, and fuel.
Reacting to Israel's military leaflets falling from the sky, Gazans say that despite the warnings from Israel to evacuate, they will not leave. More than 1 million people live in the north of the Gaza Strip, and hundreds of thousands have gone southwards to cram into temporary refuge despite air and artillery strikes also hitting the southern areas they have fled to. Israel said it had killed dozens of Hamas fighters overnight in strikes on Gaza and indicated that it had no intention of easing its bombardment. Gaza's health ministry said 436 people had been killed in these bombardments over the last 24 hours, most in the south of the narrow, densely populated territory. Malaysian Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim joined 16,000 pro-Palestinian supporters to condemn Israel's barbaric acts in Gaza. In the meantime, Qatar's ruling emir also urged international community not to grant Israel unrestricted authorization to kill Palestinians in its fight against Hamas.
The gathering in Malaysian capital Kuala Lumpur was the largest in a series of demonstrations held in Muslim-majority Malaysia in recent weeks. Malaysia has long been a vocal supporter of Palestinian cause and has called for a two-state solutions to the conflict between Israel and the Palestinians. Malaysia does not have diplomatic relations with Israel. Sheikh Tamim bin Hamad Al Thani called for end to Israel's retaliation as he insisted that Israel shouldn't be granted an unconditional green light and unrestricted authorization to kill in an annual speech to open the Gulf Arab States Advisory Shura Council, his first public comment since Qatar began its most recent efforts to mediate between Israel and Hamas. Since then, wealthy gas producer Qatar has had an open dialogue with both Israel and Hamas, which has brought about the release of 4 hostages held by Hamas, including 2 Israeli women on Monday.
Hundreds of Jordanians gathered outside Al-Khaloti Mosque near Israel embassy in Amman to show support for people of Gaza. Meanwhile, protesters also took to the streets of Ramallah to demonstrate against French President's visit to the West Bank.
Protesters waved Jordanian and Palestinian flags and shouted slogans in support of Palestinians. At least 5,791 Palestinians have been killed in Israeli strikes on Gaza since October 7th. including 2,360 children. 704 Palestinians have been killed in the previous 24 hours alone, Gaza's health ministry said in a statement. The World Health Organization, in the latest of increasingly desperate UN appeals, called for an immediate humanitarian ceasefire to prevent food, medicines, and fuel supplies from running out in Gaza. And also Macron said Hamas attack was also a disaster for the Palestinian people. The French president, who met families of French victims at Tel Aviv airport, said freeing 9 French hostages was a priority for France. Macron also met Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas in Ramallah, the West Bank. Macron's visit comes after EU foreign ministers on Monday struggled to agree on a call for a humanitarian pause in the war.
Thank you for staying with us on Focus today. President Joko Widodo inaugurated Amran Sulaiman as Minister of Agriculture and General Agus Subianto as Army Chief of Staff in a ceremony at the Presidential Palace in Jakarta this morning.
President Joko Widodo inaugurated Amran and Agus in a ceremony attended by top government and military officers, including Indonesian military TNI Commander Admiral Yudo Margono, National Police Chief General Listio Sigit Prabowo, outgoing Army Chief General Dudung Abdurrahman, and Coordinating Minister for Political, Legal and Security Affairs Mahfud MD. Amran Sulaiman will serve as Minister of Agriculture for the remainder of 2019-2024 term, replacing Syahrul Yassin Limpo, who is currently detained for alleged corruption. Previously, Amran was Minister of Agriculture during Jokowi's first presidential term in 2014 to 2019. General Agus Subianto replaced Dudung Abdurrahman as Army Chief of Staff, as Agus, who was previously served as Dudung's deputy, was Commander of the Presidential Security Detail or Dan Pas Pampres in 2021 to 2022.
President Joko Widodo officially inaugurated Andi Amran Sulaiman as new Agriculture Minister and Lieutenant General Agus Subianto as new Army Chief of Staff. Amran Sulaiman replaces Syahrul Yassin Limpo, who resigned after being implicated in a corruption scandal, while Agus replaces General Dudung Abdurrahman, who will retire on November 17. Here are the profiles of Amran Sulaiman and Agus Subianto. Presidential candidate Prabowo Subianto and running mate Gibran Rakabuming Raka officially submit candidacy to the KPU. Details are next in Road to Ballot. Presidential candidate Prabowo Subianto and his running mate Gibran Rakabuming Raka officially submitted their candidacy to the General Election Commission KPU this morning. They were accompanied by leaders of all members of the Advanced Indonesia Coalition Party or KIM coalition.
Gerindra's Secretary General Ahmad Muzani told journalists presidential candidate and vice presidential candidate first meet at Prabowo's residence on Jalan Kertanegara. The pair and their entourage departed from Prabowo's residence together to the Indonesian Arena at the Gelora Bung Karno Stadium area, where the pair were officially declared as the presidential and vice presidential candidates in the 2024 presidential election. all members of the coalition party, including Gerindra Party, Golkar, PAN, PBB, Garuda Party, Glora Party, and PSI mobilized their cadres to the declaration event at GBK Stadium. Prabowo and Gibran meet with their Central Jakarta on their way to the KPU office, accompanied by a cultural parade.
The General Election Commission KPU officially closed registration for presidential and vice presidential candidates after starting the process last Thursday. However, there are several risks in verification process by the KPU. The followings are possible risks that may occur during verification. The General Election Commission made it clear that if one of the presidential and vice presidential candidates do not pass the medical examination, he will not be eligible to run in the upcoming presidential election.
Head of Technical Division at KPU, Idam Kolik, said this regulation was stipulated at Article 40 of KPU Regulation Number 19 of 2023 about the nomination of presidential and vice presidential candidates. The regulation states that the medical examination team will determine the results of the medical examination, which includes physical and mental capabilities, as well as indications of drug abuse. The health certificates and the results of the medical examination are part of requirements that must be fulfilled by presidential and vice presidential candidate pairs. About 69 people are involved in the medical examination team for residential and vice presidential candidate pairs, including examination service staff. This team consists of various parties, including medical legal team, implementation team, examination team, and support team. On Thursday last week, 2 pairs of presidential and vice presidential candidates registered with KPU. They are Anies Baswedan, Muhaimin Iskandar, and Ganjar Pranowo Mahfud MD. Both pairs underwent medical examination on October 21st and 22nd, respectively, at Central Jakarta's Gatot Subroto Army Hospital. The medical examinations are part of the verification process of their nominations.
The Election Supervisory Agency, or Bawaslu, warned all parties involved in the 2024 general elections not to conduct a campaign ahead of the schedules, which have been arranged by the General Election Commission KPU. Bawaslu also plans to strengthen supervision on elections held overseas.
The Election Supervisory Agency, or Bawaslu, again warned all political parties taking part in the upcoming general elections not to carry out a campaign ahead of timetables set by KPU. The warning was made by Bawaslu Chairman Rahmat Bagja in his response to spread of a campaign song of the National Mandate Party dubbed Pan 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 on social and electronic media. Previously, Jakarta chapter of Bawaslu said the spread of the song on social media and electronic media had violated KPU's campaign regulation. Meanwhile, Bagja also said that the agency would also strengthen the election supervision held overseas to ensure election activities abroad that can be carried out smoothly and peacefully. Bagja explains that currently there are 60 units of Foreign General Election Supervisory Committee abroad to ensure all voting activities in foreign countries can be carried out according to the existing regulations. Regarding border areas, voting in foreign countries will be held earlier than in Indonesia, which is scheduled to take place on February 14, 2024. For that, the Supervisory Committee overseas should be aware of the possibility of voting more than once in different locations.
Finance Minister Sri Mulyani Indrawati said productivity of the people will help Indonesia's economy to grow higher and escape from being trapped as a middle-income country.
Finance Minister Sri Mulyani lecture at Diponegoro University in Semarang, Central Java on Monday that the government continuously allocated funds for education and healthcare in the state budget. She says education and healthcare are closely related to the productivity of a nation. At the same time, Sri Mulyani says the government also pushes for infrastructure development because inadequate infrastructure may also affect productivity. According to a World Bank study in 2009, infrastructure can affect productivity of business and economic growth. And also in her speech, Finance Minister Sri Mulyani also says that state budget become an important instrument for the government to ensure Indonesia achieve its goal to become a prosperous country as stated in the 1945 Constitution. In order to achieve that goal, Sri Mulyani says the government has designed a state budget which has three main functions, namely allocation, distribution, and stabilization. The stabilization aspect also acts as a counter-cyclical measure whenever there are risks from the global side.
China urges the Canadian side to respect facts and truth and stop spreading lies about China. Chinese Foreign Ministry spokeswoman Mao said that the so-called statement by the Canadian Foreign Ministry distorts facts, misleads the public, and trumps up charges against China. China strongly deplores and firmly rejects this. For some time, the Canadian side has repeatedly accused China of spreading false information against Canadian politicians, but it has never come up with any strong evidence. Instead, the Canadian side has long spread lies on Xinjiang, and Hong Kong to attack and smear China, so Canada is actually the manufacturer and propagator of false information. China urges the Canadian side to respect facts and truth, stop spreading lies about China, and stop its words and deeds that poison the atmosphere of China-Canada relations and damage bilateral ties. Spain transferred hundreds of migrants from the Canary Island of Tenerife to Spain's capital, Madrid. The 7 islands of the Atlantic archipelago have become the main destination for migrants trying to reach Spain, and this year there has been an increase in attempted crossings from Senegal and other African countries. Between January 1st and October 15 this year, the islands received 23,537 migrants, an 80% increase from the same period last year, according to official data. At least 1,000 people have died attempting the cross. According to the charity. Spain's acting migration minister pledged an aid package worth $53 million on October 19th to help the Canary Island cope with an extraordinary migration flow. Ukrainian President Zelensky pledged to maintain military pressure on Russian-occupied Crimea during a security conference in Prague, despite technical glitches and potential hack attack. Kyiv has increased strikes on Russian forces in the Black Sea and Crimea, a region seized by Moscow in 2014, as Ukrainian forces continue their counter-offensive. President Zelensky criticized Russia's illusion of domination in Crimea and the Black Sea, citing technical glitches. Ukrainian attacks in and around Crimea have included strikes on a Russian air base on the peninsula, a Black Sea, and the only bridge linking Crimea to Russia. Sister of jailed WSD reporter Evan Greshkovich, Daniel Greshkovich, said that she is relying on President Joe Biden's promise to return her brother. Earlier this month, a Russian court dismissed a complaint against the extension of Greshkovich's pre-trial detention more than 6 months after his arrest on spying charges, which he denies. The decision essentially means that he will remain in detention. No date has been set for his trial. Greshkovich was detained by the Federal Security Service FSB on March 29 in the city of Yekaterinburg, carry up to 20 years in prison. Greshkovich is the first American journalist to be detained on spy charges in Russia since the Cold War over 3 decades ago. Residents in India's capital expect air quality to deteriorate in coming days, despite a brief respite as government vowed to reduce air pollution. Meanwhile, a Louisiana superfault led to a pile-up of 158 cars just west of New Orleans on Monday that killed 7 people, injured at least 25.
On the National Air Quality Index reported air quality in New Delhi as poor on Tuesday, easing back from very poor on Monday. Although local residents noticed a drop in pollution levels, they said the air quality is likely to worsen in the days ahead due to the upcoming Diwali festival, when scores of people set off polluting firecrackers and the winter season. Dense smoke usually forms over the Indian capital every winter as cold, heavy air traps, construction dust, vehicle emissions, and smoke from crop stubble burning in neighboring states. The New Delhi government has been encouraging residents to use public transport and avoid private vehicles in a bid to improve the air quality. Meantime, at least one vehicle went over the edge and lay sideways in the water, pictures posted by Louisiana State Police showed. The search for victims from the chain reaction accident continued for hours after the crash, the state police said on Facebook. A fire broke out in part of the crash scene, forcing emergency responders to offload hazardous materials from a tanker truck, the state police said. The accident closed Interstate 55 in St. John the Baptist Parish. Local media labeled the condition as a super fog, which the National Weather Service describes as a mixture of smoke and moisture released from that smoldering organic material, during which visibility is lowered to less than 10 feet or 3 meters.
Stay with us on Focus Today. We'll be back after the break. Stay with us on Focus Today. We'll be back after the break. Welcome back on Focus Today. Scientists from Peru and Poland unveiled the face of a girl sacrificed more than 500 years ago during the Inca Empire and whose mummified remains were found near a volcano in the Peruvian Andes nearly 3 decades ago.
Experts reconstructed the face of the girl, believed to be between 14 and 15 years of age, whose frozen body was discovered in 1995 at 6,400 meters above sea level in the Caloma province of the Arequipa region. Scientists from the Catholic University of Santa Maria and the University of Warsaw in Poland unveiled the reconstructed face after 20 years of analyzing the skull and body of the mummy, known as the Lady of Ampato or colloquially as Juanita. According to research, the girl would have been sacrificed during the Inca Empire as an offering to the gods to ask them to stop natural disasters such as droughts, floods, volcano eruptions, and plagues. Experts believe that Juanita, who has a 5-centimeter fissure in her skull, died from a severe blow to the head, probably with a truncheon or Inca weapon when she was kneeling, which caused internal hemorrhaging.
Por golpe en la cabeza y podemos ver en la escanos de tomografía que la cabeza fue rompida por golpe muy fuerte.
The 2023 Bridgestone World Solar Challenge commenced with teams from around the world departing from Darwin on October 22nd.
Their goal is to race solar-powered electric cars across Australia, covering a 3,000-kilometer route to reach Adelaide by October 29th. While officially not labeled as a race, teams compete to complete the journey as quickly as possible. The event serves as a platform for the development of experimental solar-powered vehicles, with university teams and major car brands participating. The route presents extreme conditions, with scorching temperatures over 40 degrees Celsius and camping in a region inhabited by deadly snakes. Teams must also contend with challenging crosswinds across the Great Victoria Desert.
The technology that comes out of this event is really helping to drive forward many different industries. So we're driving forward efficient car design, and we're also driving forward solar technology and electrical efficiency in general.
The competition features 2 categories: Challenger class for single-occupant cars designed for maximum aerodynamic and electrical efficiency, and cruiser class cars, which emulate future passenger vehicles.
2 giant panda cubs have been seen enjoying tender moments in Chengdu Research Base of Giant Panda Breeding in South China Sichuan Province. The video footage showing the sweet moments of
Arianti Putri has broken a new record on the women's 100-meter T12 category at Asian Para Games in Hangzhou, China. Arianti said on Tuesday, October the 24th, that the previous record was made by Chinese sprinter Guo Huazhou at 12.56 seconds 9 years ago. On the women's 100-meter T12 category, Arianti hit the finish line with a record time of 12.52 seconds. She beat Indian runner Simran, who recorded 12.68 seconds, and won the silver, and the Chinese bronze medalist Yakin Shen, who clocked in at 12.78 seconds. This achievement marks an improvement in Arianti's medal tally in Asian Para Games. In the 2018 Asian Para Games in Jakarta, Arianti won a silver medal. The gold medal from Arianti was the second gold from the para athletics after Sattoyogo Purnomo gave the first gold from the men's 400-meter T37 category.
Manchester United manager Erik ten Hag laid a wreath in the center of the historic Old Trafford pitch in stirring tribute to club great Bobby Charlton ahead of their Champions League group stage match against FC Copenhagen.
Ten Hag, who has called Charlton a leader and a giant, Charlton's former teammate Alex Stepney and under-19's team captain Dan Gore followed a lone piper playing the red flag onto the pitch. Charlton, an England World Cup winner and one of Manchester United's greatest players, died on October 21 at the age of 86. Hours before kickoff, fans bouquets and scarves to the hundreds already encircling the statue's base. The words Sir Bobby Charlton 1937 to 2023
Milan forward Olivier Giroud has given his teammates some advice on stopping France striking partner Kylian Mbappe when the Rossoneri traveled to Paris to take on PSG. The French national team's record goal scorer revealed he had advised Milan's defense on how best to counter PSG's French forwards with special attention to Mbappe. Milan sit third in Group F on 2 points after two 0-0 draws against Newcastle and Borussia Dortmund in their opening Champions League fixtures, despite dominating possession and shots on target in both matches. To this end, head coach Stefano Pioli hopes his side prove less wasteful in front of goal against a revamped PSG side no longer reliant on individual brilliance over team structure under Luis Enrique. To this end, head coach Stefano Pioli hopes his side prove less. Holger Rune came back from a set down to topple Miomir Kecmanovic 1-6, 7-5, 6-3 to get off to a winning start at the Swiss indoors Basel on Tuesday. Holger Rune came back 6-3, 6-4 in the opening round of the Vienna Open. 1-6, 7-5, 6-3 to get off to a winning start at the Swiss indoor.
It was only the number one seed's second win in 9 matches, and it could easily have gone the other way. After badly losing the first set, the Dane was down a break and trailing 3-4 in the second. It was only the before breaking back to level at in 9 matches, and it could went on to break with Serbian opponents serve again to take the set 7-5. The Dane was down 4. Rune did not face a breaking back deciding set as he went on to steal the win in just over 2 hours. He went on to break his Serbian opponents serve again to take the set semi-final run at the Shanghai Masters. Rune did not where the Bulgarian point in the deciding set as he went on to steal the win in just Dimitrov continued his impressive form with a comprehensive straight set victory over the Italian in just over 90 minutes. Where the Bulgarian Meanwhile, Lorenzo Sonego was more fortunate than his compatriot in his first round match, edging past Argentina's Francisco Cerundolo 6-4, 5-7, and 6-2. Meanwhile, Lorenzo Sonego was more fortunate than his compatriot. Cerundolo 6-4, 5-7, and 6-2.
And up next, we have today's weather forecast from Tvri's. That ends today's news on Focus Today. I'm Valerina Daniel. Thanks for watching and goodbye.